book on plutocrats, which is very illuminating, before she became a minister. I'm afraid she might have become a little bit too familiar with the world, but maybe that's a good thing. But basically, she was showing that in how an international elite sharing the same information, sharing wealth, and basically they're more common with each other than with the people, the impoverished lower levels of their own societies, and they're more likely to be at home in foreign capitals than, say, in some of their more remote villages, or even on their own nation states. So they move around the world, and they're more the movers and shakers. These are the people that Toronto wants to attract as investors and movers and shakers. So these to me are two parallel trends, but maybe they are not the same due to the same forces. So technology is part of it. There's another thing that actually, since we're talking about larger trends, a very interesting scholar was here last week at the Monk Center, Bill Nozanic, talking about investor buybacks, which basically changes the whole way the economy works. Investors, companies buy back their own shares instead of reinvesting in training and in machinery or whatever else. So financial gains are made, but not actual employment, and they reduce employment. And this is a global trend, 30, 40 years in the making, and contributes to the hollowing out of the economy, of middle class and so on, in addition to globalization, in addition to technology, which this whole trend nobody talks about, but it's part of the package. So there are a number of trends going on, and maybe those billion people have become wealthier over the last, I don't know how many years, might be due to some older trends that were lost post-war, and those trends are no longer in effect, or at least dying off.
But the first question was, is there a relationship between the growing middle class and the growing 1%? Wasn't that your original question?
Well, yeah, he said he has no answer.
The 1% is not the problem. The problem is, you are right, people are better off. And that means there's more children, because people can raise more kids now. So you talked about capital E evidence. Well, the evidence I propose is the population explosion. And this might sound cruel, but in some ways, the fact that our population is exploding is going to lead to another problem. In addition to the atmosphere getting too much CO2, we're going to run out of water. Aquifers are now in trouble. Farmers have to dig deeper and deeper into the ground to find groundwater. We're going to run out of groundwater. Already, it's costing farmers much more money to dig down into the ground and get the water. Near the oceans, salt is coming into the aquifers. So there is something called limits to growth. I'm old enough to have remembered the limits to growth argument that was Club of Rome. Okay? And so here's where I differ with the Pope. Because we just can't keep making more and more babies. We have to have some kind of limits to the growth of the size of families. China threw in the towel. Now you can have more than one kid. So we've got values that are in conflict with each other. Yes, I want everybody to be better off, but what's going to happen when everybody is better off? And you're competing for a finite amount of resources. This globe is not infinite, it is finite. And all you have to do, as McLuhan pointed out, is fly up into space in a satellite, and all of a sudden you see that the Earth is just a little stage. And we are all players and strut here and there.
Is there a question?
So,
You got a question?
no, I don't need a question.
I saw a lot of shaking heads about population. What was the shaking heads?
Because
What were
women,
you
as they
shaking your
get
heads about?
wealthier, they
Huh?
actually have fewer children.
The wealthier have fewer children.
Yes,
Right.
proportionally. There probably was there definitely was a point, and perhaps in the not too distant past, where 62 people controlled half the world's wealth. Those people would have all belonged to royal families, so it's just a different sort of person now that controls a lot of the money. And there's probably points before that where less than 62 people controlled much more of the world's wealth than that. So that's not a new situation. It's
So
But
just,
we're supposed to
So is that
learn
right?
to do better.
yeah, I think
that
there was
right?
probably a point where it seemed like democracy was working in a way where everybody had a say about where things would go. Democracy has been perhaps replaced a bit by consumerism. You vote with your dollars now, but $1 or $5 you might get a day is influencing those 62 people who have a lot of the money. It doesn't seem like you can tell Apple what color their next computer is going to be, but they are paying attention to who's buying stuff and taking tons of statistics. So, in a way, those 62 people might be more answerable to the general population than royalty was. It could be much more personal and capricious about how things should go.
So we're nearing our 0 hour of 8 o'clock, and so I want to now give the three guests, speaking slowly, give you a chance to rally your thoughts, a final go-around. The question was, is there a global village? You can readdress that, or simply respond to your internal summation of what the discussion's been about. Who would like to begin among the three of you? Bonnie?
Sure. A lot of information, of course, to process, and I mean, just to respond, of course, most things you can find great imagery, photography, photo-based work that deals with all of these subjects, wealth, poverty, climate change, et cetera, everything that we've been discussing, that can articulate it in a different way. I also was thinking about how, in the field of photography, and perhaps to go to that opening, that quote you listed about, I think I said, the medium of photography has no boundaries or something like that, and it's precisely because, I mean, anything goes right now. I mean, there's so much that sort of qualifies as a photographic image, and it's very difficult to describe exactly what it is right now, therefore, sort of where that argument came out of. But one thing that I thought was interesting that I was thinking about at one point during this discussion was how, well, the idea that every new technology replaces another and one becomes obsolete, but in the field of photography, in many ways, people are going back to early technologies because they're not accessible anymore. You know, color is gone, so people are therefore going back to the early technologies that they can do in their own studios. So that's one interesting point. Another one is the book. There's this resurgence of the book in the field of photography. There's this, not so much in Canada, although we're dealing with photographic books now, but it's phenomenal what's going on in the United States and Europe. All these book fairs, all these artist books, so this huge renewed interest in books is also another issue. I mean, I think we all love the internet too much, but all the alternatives is what I was thinking about, whether or not there'll be some kind of alternative where people are rejecting that more and more. Anyhow, those are the thoughts that came to mind. Oh, one other thing that just to bring up in terms of value judgments. I'm sorry I can't remember the exact details, but there's an American artist, Karen Simon, who makes incredible work that has done one project with a computer programmer, brilliant computer programmer whose story name I've forgotten. But as far as I recall, you could enter any keyword into this program that they've made, and then it brings forth all these images by scanning the internet that represent this keyword, coming from globally, as I understand it. So that might be something that people here are interested in.
That
in
sounds
looking
like
into.
Google.
It's related, but there's a whole that's similar. It's much more precise.